so glad to have today on my show Steve Milloy. He's a Fox News contributor and founder junkscience.com. Steve, how are you today?
Great, Maria. Thanks for having me.
You said there is no such thing as deadly air pollution in America or really anywhere else. Both the EPA and New York Times know this but don't care because leftist agenda. Can you elaborate more?
Yeah, sure. So for about the past 30 years, the US EPA and after that, the World Health Organization has been trying to scare the entire world about various air pollutants, particularly something called PM 2.5, which is very fine particulate matter. And both the WHO blames about 1 in 7 deaths worldwide on PM 2.5, and in the EPA they blame about 20% of American deaths on inhalation of this it's basically soot. And of course, there's no science to back any of this up. I've been in court with EPA about this. There's another case going on right now. There's really no science to back any of this up. And despite that, the EPA and the World Health Organization have used particulate matter sort of junk science to advance a political agenda, and it's this left-wing political agenda where the government, gets to control the economy.
Wonderful. Another topic, you talked about China. You said if you're worried about communist China having access to TikTok user data, how do you feel about communist China having illegal access to 69 million Medicare records through Chinese research and university at US universities? There was a scandal about that. Can you tell us more?
Yeah, so it's a big thing in America. People are worried about Chinese having access to user data, to personal data through TikTok. Well, most people don't know, and this is related to the particulate matter controversy we just discussed. Chinese national researchers in the US have had access to 69 million Medicare records, personal, private health records of elderly Americans. And where is this data today? Has it been sent back to communist China? I don't know, but they've had access to this data. Sending it back would be illegal. I'm not even sure it's legal for them to have the data as it is. But, people are worried about TikTok. They ought to be worried about this.
You mentioned also, or you elaborate on Norway, a bribe for the Brazilian president with $620 million to stop development of the Amazon jungle. What is the point exactly?
Well, so Norway, they're involved in these climate schemes and scams. And or Norway wants to be able to pump as much oil as possible, but they also want to claim to be green at the same time. And of course, you can't really do both things at once. So what Norway is trying to do is say that, well, we're pumping oil, but we're offsetting our emissions by preserving the Amazon. And so what they're doing is they're, paying Brazil to supposedly, protect the Amazon and stop development. So I look at this as, nothing could be further from the truth. Norway is not reducing its emissions by investing in the Amazon. The Amazon really doesn't have anything to do with climate. This is just sort of bribery, I think.
This is your point of view. What about the US strategy for climate change, fighting climate crisis, enhancing energy security, and accelerating the transition to clean energy? What do you think about all of this?
Well, of course, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that I think this is all a hoax. Over the past 30 years, there's been warming, but there's no warming that can be tied to carbon dioxide emissions. Most recently, as I explained in the Wall Street Journal, this idea of net zero by 2050 is impossible. And that's not just me saying that, that's the electric utility industry itself saying that net zero by 2050 is not possible. So what are we talking about? We're talking about no warming. The goal they want, net zero, is not possible. So the whole thing is a hoax.
What about Europe? There is a crisis, energy crisis in Europe. Only a quarter of European cities are adapting and mitigating plans. What do you think about the future of energy in Europe or gases?
Well, I think Europe is a disaster. This whole climate hoax. I mean, the European Union became dependent on Russian energy because of the climate hoax, and they've enriched Vladimir Putin. They have become dependent on his energy. And so he just picked the right time to invade. And so now they're all at his mercy. And the energy crisis now, the economic crisis in Europe, and the energy crisis around the world, all trace back to this, climate issue, which, once again, is a hoax.
In another hand, what is your point of view of the methodology of investment in renewable energy between USA and United Arab Emirates?
Well, I saw this last year. There's some $100 billion effort between the US and UAE, and we're just going to have to see what that means. I'm not quite sure. I haven't seen a lot of details. I know there's maybe some collaborative projects. So we're just going to have to see what, I'm interested in new technologies, and if new technologies are better than the old technologies, well, let's do new technologies, but let's see what they are first. And so far, I'm waiting to see what that is.
There is a COP28 going to happen in UAE. Do you think this is, in general, these kind of conferences can help the environment for a better life?
Well, I think that there are, the most important thing for the environment is for people to become wealthier. And so I would like, if the UN is going to be invested in improving the environment, and what it ought to be doing is investing in making people wealthier. And that tends to mean more fossil fuels. So who knows, maybe one day these conference of the parties that the UN is holding on climate will turn into pro-fossil fuel conferences, which is what I'm waiting for.
The president of the UAE, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, he said in the opening of 27th COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, he said the climate change affects stability and security in the world. How can you explain this?
Well, the weather does affect stability. Extreme weather does cause issues. Of course, the question is, what causes the extreme weather, and can anything be done about it? And that's where people like me tend to differ with, say, the United Nations on this issue.
You comment, I think, on your Twitter about Al Gore, what he said. He said we have a credibility problem, all of us. We're talking and we're starting to act, but we're not doing enough.
Right. Well, of course, people have been talking about cutting emissions now since 1990. Emissions are 50% greater now than they were in 1990. They're making absolutely no progress. All that's been accomplished is to make the price of energy more expensive. And of course, for rich people in the United States, well, that's less of a big deal. It's still annoying. But for poor people around the world, making energy more expensive just puts it that much further out of reach. And without cheap energy, they're not going to be able to improve their lives. So, one of the reasons to oppose this senseless climate stuff is because it's just making energy more expensive. It's not accomplishing anything else.
Do you think if the Republicans now are in power, climate change wouldn't be a priority?
Well, no, no, it would not be a priority. When we had President Trump, climate was not a priority. With the Republicans now in charge of the House of Representatives, climate is not going to be a priority. Energy development is going to be their priority, which is what the world needs.
Thank you, Steve Milloy, for this short interview. Thank you for your time.
Right, thank you.
Hey, Maria Malouf here. Please click to like and subscribe to Maria Malouf TV YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.